Hello everyone, this is Gary from Fantastic Fundas and this is second lecture of Polity. And in this lecture our primary focus, in fact this is just one topic over here, and what we'll do, we'll try to differentiate between the written constitution and the unwritten constitution, right? So here it is, this is written constitution, right? I'm using this symbol. This is not a standard symbol, I'm just using it for my convenience over here. And then this is unwritten constitution over here, right? Now all of us know, and I have mentioned in earlier lecture also, that best example of unwritten constitution. Okay, let me just draw one more column for sake of convenience of everyone, right? This is the first difference, and the best example over here is UK, and also New Zealand has got unwritten constitution. And if we talk about written constitution, unwritten and written constitution, of course you know this, India is a very good, of course, an example. USA has written constitution, so and so on. Now what is the difference, right? So in written constitution is the one where the provisions have been codified, right? That's what the key word is, codified provision. Whenever I'm giving lecture, I always write down the key words and rest I'm speaking. So main thing is codified provision over here, right? And this is into a, but then even over here the codified provisions are there, right, over here in unwritten constitution. But the difference is that in written constitution the codified provisions are codified in single document. This is the key word over here, single document, right? And over here it is not a single document, so that is the difference, right? Not single document. Although it doesn't mean when we say unwritten constitution that nothing at all has been written ever, but what it essentially means is that it's not a single document, right? So we move to the next difference. What else is there in see okay, let me just try to explain you this topic. Whenever you talk about written constitution, right, it comes into existence at a particular point of time, right? So that this comes into existence particular point of time, a fixed point of time, fixed when it came into existence. For example, 26 January 1950, right? That is when our constitution came into being. Now over here, if we talk about the unwritten constitution, it is continuously evolving. Every parliamentary law that is passed, that becomes part of the constitution. So this is evolving. Even ours is evolving, but we do not say that, that we do not attach a new date. We say that is an amendment. But whatever there is continuously evolving. There is no fixed date on this particular date the constitution came into being, right? So this is the difference between theirs and ours. And then this written constitution is brought into existence by a special body, right? Special body which was formed. And for example, in case of India, it was the Constituent Assembly with which the written constitution came into being. But on the other hand, if you talk about unwritten constitution, right, so for that there is no special body as such. Whatever law the parliament makes becomes the part of the constitution, right? In fact, it is the result of the constitutional development that takes place over a period of time, right? So these are the main differences over here. So we'll say that continuation, right? These are the constitutional developments. It's not that every law becomes the part of the unwritten constitution, but most of them do so, right? Then we talk about the next difference. In unwritten constitution, what happens that the parliament is in unwritten constitution. Okay, let me tell you about written first. Over here, the constitution is supreme. The question of supremacy, who is supreme? It is the constitution which is supreme. But in case of unwritten constitution, it is the parliament which is supreme and not the constitution. I'll tell you how this is possible, because many of you will object to this thing, right? So how this is possible is that in unwritten constitution, parliament is supreme. Why? Because the constitution came into being through the parliament, right? The way constitution has emerged, it was emerged as a result of the parliament. Whereas in the written constitution, the constitution is supreme and the parliament exists because of the constitution, right? So that is how it is. Okay, so okay, now okay, let me just just draw it over here quickly. So this is written constitution, and over here this is unwritten constitution. This is written and this is unwritten constitution, right? So what we were doing before this was so this was, we did up to number 5, so we did like number 6 now. Okay, number 6. So what more difference is there, right? In written constitution, the laws like, let's say, CRPC in India, the CPC, Criminal Procedure Code and Civil Procedure Code, or even REGA, right? Laws like all these laws, they are inferior laws, right? These are inferior. There's a concept of inferior laws. They are lesser laws. They do not enjoy the status of as constitutional law. There's a distinction between constitutional law and these other laws, right? But in unwritten constitution, there is no difference between constitutional law and the other laws, right? Because all these laws make the constitutional law. So that is a major thing over here, right? Now let's talk about number 7. The next difference is about flexibility and rigidity. Flexible or rigid. Now can you guess what is this thing, or written constitution? It can be both, right? It can be flexible, it can be rigid. For example, if we talk about the constitution of Sri Lanka, it is highly flexible, and if we talk about constitution of United States, it's very rigid, and a combination of somewhere in between these two is Indian constitution, India. Right, whose is largely is flexible, but in certain provisions, for example, emergency is very rigid constitution, Indian constitution, right? But most of the provisions are can be amended by the parliament, right? Now then there's article 368 also, which talks about amendment. We will be covering that in future lectures, which makes adds layer after layer. So for certain provisions it's very rigid, right? For example, amending the provisions related to High Court and all those provisions. For example, the recent GST bill is there in the parliament, for which you have to take permission of at least 50% of the states. We'll talk about it if you have not understood that topic. Focus on this one for the moment, right? And unwritten constitution has to be flexible. It cannot be rigid. This constitution, it has to be flexible, right? This is very important thing that you must know, that it is a flexible constitution. Why? Because it cannot be rigid. I mean, what I mean to say is that parliament is supreme, right? Now, because parliament is supreme here, as I said earlier also, parliament is supreme, so it has infinite power to amend the constitution, right? To whatever this is infinite power to amend the constitution. There cannot be restriction on it, right? Because if there is a restriction, that would mean the parliament won't be supreme, but we know that parliament is supreme over there, right? Then there is one more difference over here. Okay, so this difference is that it's unitary or federal, right? Like flexible, rigid. Now this constitution over here, written constitution, is either unitary or it's federal. What is Indian constitution? Indian constitution is a federal constitution. Unitary and federal. What is the difference between two? Unitary is one where all the power is with the one unit which is at the center, one unit, right? And federal is one where the power is distributed, right, between the center and the state government. For example, and let's say Indian constitution is a federal constitution, but if so is even Australian and US constitution. These are all examples of federal constitution. US, Australia, now India, all these are examples of federal constitution, right? And if parliament is supreme, right, ultimately it will take over all the powers. So basically what we have done is that divided the power. Otherwise, you know, parliament, the central power might get arbitrary. It will work according to its own whims and fancies. It will not bother about others. That is why we have followed this method of federal constitution, right? If we talk about unitary, right, it is one where all the power is concentrated just in one hand, right? So the states have nothing. That is unitary. Now, in unwritten constitution, this unwritten constitution over here, this has to be unitary. This constitution cannot be federal, right? Why? Because parliament is making all the law, and if parliament is supreme, parliament is the supreme federation. That means there's no power divided, right? Now Britishers don't want to have written constitution as their parliament, then will have to give away the supremacy. So that is why you know, they are having a unitary constitution over there. All the power is with the center, right? Now there can be, like, there have been recently some delegation of power, but that doesn't make their constitution a federal. They remain more of a unitary constitution only, right? So those are the differences, just to give you a quick reference of what we have done in this. This is written constitution, and the first differences between like where it is, and then I have talked about the codification in a single document, and then I have talked about the time period when it came into being, its existence, and this is evolving, and then how it was created, right? This is how it was created through a special body, and then who is supreme? The parliament is supreme or the constitution is supreme? That is the point we discussed. And then after that we discussed in talk about inferior laws and superior laws, the difference between them, written constitution, unwritten, and then we talked about flexibility and rigidity, and then we talked about the unitary and federal over here, and then the unwritten constitution has necessarily got to be a unitary constitution, right? So that's it, and I would just request you all over here that please subscribe to our channel, right, if you like our videos, and you can always share it with your friends. And you know, if you have any query, I'll just cover it for you. Thank you for watching.